Lesson 14, I will solve division word problems with remainders. So today we're going to kind of take a focus away from multiplication onto division. So instead of putting groups into one large group, we're going to think about taking a large group and putting it into smaller groups. So that's where we're headed today. So I want you to go ahead and get out your math journal and label it today's date, Lesson 14 division. We're going to do 2 problems in your math journal, so make sure that you do it nice and neatly. Okay, so first of all, we're going to take a look at this problem, and we're still going to use that RDW process where we read, draw, and write, only our drawing is going to look a little bit different today. So there are 12 students in PE class separated into 4 teams. How many students are on each team? So it says to draw an array. So if you can't remember what an array looks like, because it's probably been a little while since you've drawn one, remember that we're putting 12 students into 4 teams. So you're going to draw 12 dots representing students, and we're going to put these into 4 teams. So I'm going to go ahead and make 4 columns like this, and you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's the 12. So if I'm going to put these into 4 teams, I'm going to circle each group to represent a team. So it looks something like this. So when you have a nice rectangle of dots like this, if you'll remember back from 3rd grade, this is called an array. So here's a nicer looking example of one. And you can see here that these represent the team. So there's 12 students, and we put them into 4 teams. Now, think for a minute, what division statement could you write, or division problem could you write to represent this problem? So we've got 12 students, and we're putting them into 4 teams. So we're trying to figure out what division sentence would give us the quotient. So if you remember, a quotient is the answer to a division problem. So I want you to write this in your math journal. This would be your math problem. 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So that part's kind of easy. But what you need to think about, and what's kind of hard for students, is to figure out what does that 3 mean and what does the 4 mean related to this problem. So the question is, how many students are on each team? So if you look at this division problem, is it 4 students on each team or 3 students on each team? So if I look back at the problem, I can see that I have 4 teams and there are 3 students on each team. So the answer would be there are 3 students on each team. So we're going to talk about that. Number of groups and the number are in each group. Okay, so if you have a division problem like this and you want to check it to make sure it's correct, so like if I'm subtracting, I use addition to correct. When I am trying to correct, or excuse me, when I'm trying to check to see that a division problem is correct, I'm going to use multiplication. So if 12 divided by 4 equals 3, then 4 times 3 equals 12. So that's how you check, and that's going to be really important in just a minute when we talk about remainders. Okay, so again, the quotient is 3. Does 3 represent the size of the group or the number of groups? So when I look at the size of the group, each of these circles represents a group, and there's 3 in each group. So this represents the number in each group, or the size of groups, not the number of groups. Because if you look, there's 4 groups. There are only 3 in each group. So in this case, our answer tells us the size of the group. Okay, we're going to take a look at that same story one more time, but we're going to revise it just a little bit. So there are 12 students in PE class, but now there are 3 students are needed on each team. How many teams can be made? So if you notice, the array is exactly the same. There's still 12, and we still made groups of 3. But this time it's not asking for how many students are in each team. It says how many teams can be made. So what would the division problem look like for this story? You should go ahead and write that in your journal and then see if you have the same division statement that I have. Should have come up with 12 divided by 3 equals 4. So last time it was 12 divided by 4 equals 3 because the question was asking something different. So this time, does the quotient, or number 4, does it tell us the size of the group or the number of groups? So if I go back up here, if you'll notice, there are 3 in each group. So that's the size of the group, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. So this time our quotient tells us the number of groups. So you'll notice the same array can represent the same situation, but in this case, our answer was reversed. So instead of asking for how many were in each group, this time we were asking for how many groups. That's why it's important to know if it's asking for the size of the group or the number of groups. Okay, one more. This time, let's take the same PE class, but this time we have 13 students and we're going to divide them into 4 teams. So I want you to try to draw another array, but this time instead of 12 students, we have 13 students and we're dividing them into 4 teams. So if you remember how we did that, we just kind of like you were dealing cards to friends and you had 4 friends, you would just say 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just keep going until you run out of, in this case, it'd be students. So if you'll notice, your array is going to look a little bit different this time, isn't it? So there's 12. Well, what do I do with that 13th? It's just going to kind of be the oddball left right over there. And here's another example of that that's a little bit neater. So it looks exactly like the last one, except we have this one over here. So what will be the expression to represent this problem? Remember, expression is just the division sentence without the answer. So this time, we would have 13 because that's how many students we have, and we're dividing it by 4. So it would be 13 divided by 4. And what do you call the one that's left over? What do you call that in division? It would be the remainder, right? And how many do we have? We have. So in this case, the quotient is 3. We still have 3 students per group, but we have 1 left over, or a remainder of 1. So the way you say that is you say 4 remainder 1. We're going to be doing some of this today, and we're also going to be talking about how do you check this type of division problem. So if the last time we checked division we used multiplication, this time it's going to be a little bit different. We still have 3 and 4, so 3 times 4 equals 12, but the answer is 13. So can you figure out what you have to do here to get from 12 to 13? You have to use this remainder, right? You have to add the remainder back on. So that's why we still get the answer of 13. So when we do our division problems today in our problem set, we're going to have to also check them. So when we have a remainder, we're still going to multiply, but you have to add that remainder on to the end. Okay, so this time I want you to go ahead and get out your problem set. We're going to take a look at that, and we're going to work through these problems together. Go ahead and put your name at the top, and then we're going to use this RDW, actually WW. Remember, we got 2 W's. And we're going to solve these problems. So first of all, let's read it. There are 19 identical socks. How many pairs of socks are there? Will there be any socks without a match? If so, how many? So the first thing we're going to do is draw. And we've been doing a lot of drawing with tape diagrams, but when we do these division problems, we're going to actually do an array. So we're going to put these into pairs. So there are 2 in a pair. So when you draw your array, just make pairs of 2 until you have a total of 19. So I want you to go ahead and do that. And then when you have your array the way that you think that it should look, you should come back and check and see if we have the same thing. Okay, so I have 8 socks, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and then I'm going to have 19. So go ahead and circle your pairs of socks just like this. Hopefully you can make yours a little neater. So now that we have our array, now we have to think about what's our division problem going to look like. So we started with 19, and we put them into pairs. So how many are in a pair? There are 2, right? So we have 19 divided by 2. So I'm looking at my array. What's the answer? Where do I get the answer to this? I have to go back and count all of my groups. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the answer would be 19 divided by 2 is 9. But remember, when I have 1 left over, I'm going to put this R1, which means remainder 1. So how many pairs of socks are there? So I would say there are 9 pairs of socks. And notice I didn't say 9 remainder 1 pairs because that doesn't even make sense. We have this 1 left over, but it's not a pair. It's just 9 pairs. There are 9 pairs of socks. Then it says, will there be any socks without a match? And the answer to that is yes. There will be 1 sock. There will be 1 sock without a match. Okay, let's take a look at the second problem. If it takes 8 inches of ribbon to make a bow, how many bows can be made from 3 feet of ribbon? And then it tells us 1 foot equals 12 inches. Will any ribbon be left over? So first of all, I've got 3 feet of ribbon, and we're talking about inches. So I've got to go from feet to inches. So if there's 1 foot equals 12 inches, so that would be 12 3 times, or 12 times 3, which equals 36. So I have 36 inches, and I'm going to put 8 of them in a group. So I'm going to have to make an array of 36. I'm going to pause the video and do that. And I want you to go ahead and make an array also. Okay, so this is the way that my array turned out. I went ahead and counted 36 dots, and I put them into groups of 8. It would be okay if your groups went vertically instead of horizontally, but there still had to be 8 in each group. So regardless of which way your array is turned, there still should be 8 in each circle. So now that I have my array drawn, I have to come up with my division sentence, because this was not my division sentence. Remember, this is just where I went from feet to inches. So I had 36 inches of ribbon, and I put that into groups of 8. And when I go back, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups, but I have 4 left over, remainder of 4. So my question is, how many bows can be made from 3 feet of ribbon? So my answer would be 4 bows can be made. And it says, will any ribbon be left over? So I'm going to say with 4, and remember these are inches, so it would be with 4 inches left over. So again, notice I did not say that 4 remainder 4 bows can be made, because there's no such thing as a remainder 4 bow. The remainder is just going to be the inches of ribbon that's left over. Okay, so let's look at number 3. So the library has 27 chairs and 5 tables. If the same number of chairs is placed at each table, how many chairs could be placed at each table? Will there be any extra chairs? If so, how many? So I have a total of 27, and I am putting them into groups of 5. So I want you to draw your array to look like that. I'm going to pause the video and draw mine, and then we'll come back and check together. So this is the way that my array turned out. So you can see that I have 27 circles, and I put them into groups of 5. Again, it would not matter if you decided to make your groups go horizontally instead of vertically, but there still should be 5 in each group. So I have 27, and I put it into 5 groups, so that would be 27 divided by 5, and I go back and I count my groups, and I have 5 in each group with the remainder of 2. So when I go back to write my statement, if the same number of chairs is placed at each table, how many chairs can be placed at each table? So the answer to that is 5 chairs can be placed at each table. And then it says, will there be any extra chairs at each table? With 2 extra chairs, because that's my remainder. Okay, if you're feeling kind of comfortable with this process, maybe you want to go ahead and try number 4 by yourself and come back. If not, you can always do it with me. So let's take a look and read this problem. The baker has 42 kilograms of flour. She uses 8 kilograms each day. After how many days will she need to buy more flour? So let's begin with our array. Again, I'm going to pause the video and draw the array, and I want you to do the same. Okay, so I drew 42 dots in my array, and then I circle groups of 8. So you notice this time I had to go horizontally because I could not fit 8 going vertically. If you could fit 8 going vertically, it's perfectly fine if your array is going this way. But remember, there should be 8 in each of your groups, so regardless of which way it goes. Okay, so let's go ahead and write our sentence. I think this time I'm going to type. I can type a little bit faster than I can write. So the answer to the question is, after how many days will she need to buy more flour? So I'm thinking if each of these is a day, so she's got a day here, a day here, a day here. So the answer here, and I think I still have this, the answer is not 4. The answer would be 5, remainder 2. I have one more of these, don't I? Okay, so after how many days? So I'm thinking to myself, I would never say 5 remainder 2 days. That wouldn't even make sense. In this case, it's not really even asking about the remainder. It's just asking about the number of groups. Well, if each of these is a day, then after 5 days, she will need to buy more flour. So that's what my sentence is going to say. She will need to buy more flour after 5 days. And it doesn't ask if there's going to be any left over, so I don't even have to go there with this one. Caleb has 76 apples. He wants to bake as many pies as he can. If it takes 8 apples to buy each pie, how many apples will he use? How many apples will not be used? So this time I really want you, if you have not attempted to do any of these problems by yourself, I want you to try to do this one all by yourself, or at least try to do the array by yourself and the division sentence, and you can come back and check with me. Okay, so I drew 76 dots, and I put them into groups of 8. So now I'm going to write my division sentence. So I have 76 divided by 8 equals, I go back and count my groups. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 groups with a remainder of 4. So if it takes 8 apples to make each pie, how many apples will be used? So the answer to that question would be, there will be, oh, this is kind of tricky because it's not going to be 9 apples. That's not how many apples there were. There were 8 groups of 9. So if it says how many apples will be used, I've got to take this 76 and take away 4, which would be 72. So there will be 72 apples with 4 left over. That last part says how many apples will not be used. So when I say with 4 left over, that answers that question. That's why in this RDWW process, that last W is really important that you don't skip it. Because if I didn't go back and look at this problem and see where it said how many apples will be used, I honestly would have just said the answer was 9, and that would have been wrong. There would be 72 apples used, because if you counted all of these, 8 times 9 is 72, and then there would be 4 left over. There's one more. All right, so 45 people are going to the beach. 7 people can ride in each van. How many vans will be required to get everyone to the beach? So again, we're going to make another array using 45. I'm going to pause the video and do that, and I want you to draw an array also. Okay, so here's my 45 people, and you can see that I went ahead and put them into groups of 7. How many vans will be required for everyone to get to the beach? So let's go ahead and make our division sentence. So I have 45 divided by 7. When I go back and count, each of these circles represents a van. So there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, remainder 3. So when I'm thinking about this answer here for a second, because I only have 7 vans here, but what about these 3 people? I have to get everybody to the beach. So actually, I'm going to need another van. There's just going to be some empty seats in that van. So when I answer the question, how many vans will be required to get everyone to the beach, my answer is not going to be 6 remainder 3, because there's no such thing as a remainder 3 van. It's actually going to be 7. I had to round up this time so that I could get everybody to the beach. So 7 vans required to get everyone to the beach. So I don't have to answer that this